Merry Christmas, everybody. And we are just, again, so thrilled that you are joining us at all of our campuses, those watching online. And I know it's already been said, but those of you watching in the overflow spaces, we're just so thankful that you would accommodate our craziness this season, but you would join us to celebrate the arrival and the birth of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And whether this is your first Christmas or whether this is your 79th or 90th Christmas, my goodness, we're thrilled that you're here. And the challenge every single year is, how do you tell the story in a way that's fresh and new, that leaves everyone walking away thinking, now that's a different take on it. I didn't see that one coming. That's gonna make me think of it differently. And this is a tall order because, we're across 15 locations with thousands of people that span all kinds of different categories and demographics, ages and stages. Yet the goal would be for every single one of you to resonate with something in today's message. And maybe, just maybe, you'll walk away looking at the Nativity differently. But it's gonna take us a while to get there because, one, I just believe the idea needs to be teased out. And in addition to that, I think Christmas requires all the things. I love all the festivities of Christmas. Anyone else? Wave at me if you love the festivities of Christmas. Yeah, the arts just come on display. I love the music. I love the films. I love the pictures and the photographs. I love the decor. I like the pageantry and the parties and the programs, getting to see your kids sing in a choir and getting to see the family dressed up and out to dinner. I love all the things. I even love how creativity even makes its way into our culinary spaces where cookies and desserts, they just come center stage. Christmas requires all the things, and I think a true Christmas service should be elegant, and it should be creative, and it should be thought-provoking, and it should be well done, and it should touch all ages. And so we are so thrilled that you are here, but no, it's gonna take a while to land the plane. And throughout this message, you're gonna be thinking, where is this going? And that's kind of intended. You're also gonna think at one point, I did not see that coming. And hopefully it all ties together at the end. But before we get there, we gotta have a place to start. And where I wanna start is in 1984 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is known as Block E. In fact, this is a picture from 1984 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My family of 5 lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, walking distance from this place. And years later, 20 years later, I would actually take my wife, Kristen, on our first date to a movie right there in Block E in Minneapolis. And I say that because right down the street from Block E was this historical bus station, the Greyhound bus station, right on the corner of First Avenue. And as the city was growing and, the things were gaining momentum, they started recognizing the different challenges of transportation and the different needs within our city. And so they decided, hey, we need to expand the bus station. And so they built a new facility and they moved out of the Greyhound bus station on First Avenue, to which a businessman came in and he bought the property and he turned it into a concert venue. Right there on the corner of First Avenue, and still to this day, that's what it goes by, First Avenue. And this has housed some of the most iconic artists, bands, and musicians from all around the world here in this concert venue. But for the longest time, it wasn't even on the map. No one even heard of First Avenue until 1984, a local artist from Minneapolis, Minnesota, launched an album called Purple Rain. And what was his name? Prince. Come on, wave at me if you're a Prince fan. You can admit that in church. I think my favorite lyric is, I was dreaming when I wrote this, forgive me if I go astray. I sometimes feel like that's the case in the sermon. I'm like, folks, I think I was dreaming when I wrote this, forgive me if I go astray. And simultaneously, while all this is happening, Purple Rain, the album, took the pop culture by storm, but what it did in the city of Minneapolis and its influence on our city was pretty significant. And at the same time, being born in 1984 were 3 triplet brothers, and here they are. Can you tell the resemblance? Folks, these are 2 of my closest friends, Lawrence Miles and Craig Sims, and the 3 of us were born in the heart of Minneapolis in 1984. Craig and I were delivered at HCMC, Hennepin County Medical Center. Lawrence's mom took him to a much nicer clinic, and ever since he's been bougie and a snooty booty, and we love that about him. And what's frustrating is over the years, we would develop this just affinity for the arts and for music and jazz and all the different things. And over time, God would give these 2 giftings. Craig became quite the piano player, and Lawrence became quite the singer. And what is annoying is God didn't give me any gifting. Like if I were to sing today, it would make everyone feel extremely awkward. So over time, I just discovered maybe my role in the gig is I just need to put them on the spot and make them sing. I love hearing Lawrence sing, and we get to hear him sing worship all the time, but I like hearing him sing the classics, something that has some soul on it, something that's a little bit more vintage and not overproduced. And so I told him the other day, this actually 2 days ago, I said, hey, I'm going to have you sing the song Bridge Over Troubled Water. Now, some of you may be a fan of Simon Garfunkel's version of it or the Beatles or Aretha Franklin, but some of the biggest icons have covered the song Bridge Over Troubled Water. And I thought, well, it only seems right that my guy, Lawrence, covers it here at Christmas at Northview. So would you do me a favor and welcome Lawrence Miles to the platform?
You'd think after all these years I'd get used to being called on the spot. This is my first time singing this song, so bear with me. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I'll dry them all, and I'm on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down.
Amazing. I have tried to convince Lawrence always to be a third wheel for Kristen and I. Hey, when we go out on a date, you just sit in the back seat and sing to us all night. And he hasn't taken us up on the offer. But again, you know, the friendship is there, and I love these guys. Fun fact about Craig, Craig's grandfather, Robert Williams, was the first African-American to play for the Minneapolis Lakers before they went to LA. These are just wonderful guys and friends. And over the years, we've had just all these amazing experiences centered around music and the arts. And we have become fans of a jazz band called Snarky Puppy. Now, wave at me if you've ever heard of Snarky Puppy at all of our campuses. Yeah, they're a great jazz band. And recently, this past March, they were performing in Chicago. And so myself, Lawrence, and Craig decided, hey, let's go to Chicago to see Snarky Puppy. And so this is us right outside the venue. Now, we make our way into the venue, and what you got to understand about this band is they are composed by a guy by the name of Michael League, who in our generation is arguably one of the greatest musical minds and composers. The guy is brilliant. And he plays the bass, and he stands center of the band, and you almost don't even recognize him, but he is responsible for composing the music that you hear at the concert. So thousands of people, flood into this venue, and we get to our seats, and Craig's like, hey, I'm gonna go to the concession stand. So he goes to the concession stand, and he comes back, and he's like, you're not gonna believe it. And he pulls out his phone, and he shows us this picture. This is Craig with Michael League. And he's like, you're not gonna believe it. I go out into the lobby, and there he was, standing right in the middle of the lobby. And here's what's amazing. No one recognized him. Here, this brilliant musical genius stands in the center of a lobby. Thousands of people have shown up to hear his music, and they're passing him by. They don't even recognize him. I can't help but think of the Christmas story. When Jesus arrived, the source of knowledge and reason and logic, this brilliant artist, the light of the world, arrived on the scene. They didn't see it coming. Even though there were centuries on end of predictions and promises and foretellings and prophecies, when he arrived, most people missed it. Still to this day, people miss it. One of Jesus' best friends, John, he said this. He said, in the beginning was the Word. Now he's referencing Jesus as this idea that he was the source of all logic and reasoning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So he said, hey, just know Jesus is a big deal. He was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made, and without him, nothing was made that has been made. So John wants us to know, hey, when Jesus showed up, it was the full package, the creator, the artist of heaven and the universe, the architect of everything. He created all things. And in him was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world, and he was in the world. And though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet, watch this statement, to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. I don't know what it was like for you growing up. At times I would get sideways and get sassy, talk back to maybe an authority figure or a parent. And I heard the statement growing up at times where someone would hear a statement come out of someone's mouth and they would say, hey, who gives you the right to talk like that? Anyone else heard that growing up? Who gives you the right to talk like that? You know, as Christians, we say some pretty bold things. We are children of God. I'm a son of God. You're a daughter of God. We are children of the Most High King. Well, who gives us the right to talk like that? Jesus. Jesus gives us the right. He shows up without a family to belong to, offering you and I a family to belong to. It's brilliant. Jesus shows up with no place to stay, and he offers you and I a place to belong. It's fascinating. And what is amazing to me is John says, hey, Jesus was the ultimate epiphany. He was the light of the world. And in his life was light. Essentially what John is saying is the more you got closer to Jesus, the more you watched him and seen how he lived, operated, taught, and did things, you would have these epiphany moments, these like aha moments of like, oh, that's different. And my prayer every week we gather, and certainly on Christmas, is maybe we would have an epiphany moment. Maybe you would walk away and be like, wow, that's really great. And I love that song that Lawrence sang, Bridge Over Troubled Water, because, well, if Jesus is anything, he's a bridge, right? Jesus shows up in some masterful, creative, brilliant fashion, takes two pieces of wood in the form of a cross, and he bridges the gap between us and our Heavenly Father. He's a bridge over troubled water. This is amazing. This is what we celebrate in our Jesus. And when you look at Jesus showing up, the creator of all things, the one who spoke light into existence, you can't help but just be mesmerized by what is taking place in the Nativity. I mean, think about it. This man, Jesus, God himself spoke light. Now, you could do a whole case study, and I could rattle off a bunch of statistics and research on light because it's overwhelming. It's intimidating how vast and intense light can be. For example, its speed. Light can travel around the entire globe 7.5 times in a single second. And here's the thing that you have to understand about art. Art always leaks the personality of the artist. So when you look at light, you're like, man, what does that tell me about my God, the creator? I know we love to celebrate attributes of God. He is faithful, and he's merciful, and he's just, and he's righteous, and he's holy. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, all those things. But he's also fast. The speed of light is amazing, and somehow he was able to create that. So think about the creator of light and the individual who had the ability to hardwire such speed into something. He shows up on the scene, and you do your own research. Don't take my word for it. You will never once in the Bible find Jesus running. He walked everywhere. The average pace of a human walking is 3 miles per hour. The individual who spoke light into existence downshifted and became so patient and moved at humanity's pace. You ever been stuck behind someone in traffic who's driving slow, they're in the left lane, and you just want to honk at them? Yeah, I'm a broken person too. I do the same thing. If I'm Jesus, I show up on the scene, I'm honking at humanity. We gotta hurry some things up, but he's so patient. I think it is his patience that really makes his faithfulness so remarkable. It is his patience that informs the great hymns. Great is thy faithfulness. You're so willing to meet me where I'm at and move at my pace. You're gentle, you're loving, you're down to earth, and your faithfulness it's unreal. It's so great. And I thought to myself, it only feels right that in this moment, we have Brielle and Claudel perform Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto
You see, what I love about art is it's thought-provoking. A song will make you think. A photograph will make you think. A picture, a sculpture, it'll make you think. And as a family, Krista and I, for years, have loved to take our kids to art exhibits. I love positioning my kids in a place where they have to have a constructive conversation about the way they think, because I think one of the challenges in our world is helping young people think critically and independently. And so we go to art exhibits all the time. And recently, we were in Dallas at an art exhibit. This is my son, Miles, Riley, Cannon, and Presley. And we went into this exhibit, and I'll just give you a couple examples of how this plays out for our family. We came to this statue. And here's what's amazing. You have this really big giant of a man, and then below it, if you can tell, you have a much smaller version of a man. And as you're there looking at the art, what you discover is they're the same person. And so I'll take something like that and I'll say, hey kids, when you look at this, what do you think? And why do you think like that? And so the question becomes, are you the small version of a person looking up into the giant you can become? Or are you the giant overwhelmed with insecurity, thinking much lesser of yourself and seeing yourself as insignificant? Which kind of person are you? And I love that because it gives you a conversation and something to think about. I said to my kids, hey, which one are you? Are you an ant or are you a giant, right? Like, which one are you? And the idea is to say, hey, see the potential, see the greatness, see who you could become. Don't give yourself over to insecurity and self-deprecating thoughts. How you view things is important. We came to this one photo, Miles was like, Dad, this one is sad. I said, well, pal, why is it sad? And he's like, well, if you look at her neighbors, all their lights are on. But if you slide the screen over a little bit and you see her house, there's no lights on. I said, yeah, pal, think about that. Why does that make you feel sad? He said, I don't know. It appears that there's no one home for her to go home to. I said, yeah, that's a real thing. And son, you should know that that is some people's reality. In fact, this Christmas, some of you, this is the new normal, and you are returning to an empty home, or maybe you're getting together around a table and there's an empty seat. Art makes you think and see and sense what is happening around you in deeper ways. You understand what I'm saying? And if you ever spend enough time around art, there is gonna come a point where you have to give some attention to the Mona Lisa, the holy grail of all art. And this is the part where you're gonna be like, where's he going? This is becoming a lot. But just wait, it's gonna smack you in the face when you least expect it. The Mona Lisa is the most famous painting in the entire world. In fact, most artists and art specialists would say across all art, from statues to paintings to photographies, this is humanity's masterpiece is what they would say. And what is interesting is most people, they say, when they first encounter the Mona Lisa, they find it to be underwhelming and disappointing. They walk away initially thinking, what's the big deal about that? And again, in order to understand art or in order to appreciate art, you have to understand the artist. And who painted the Mona Lisa? Leonardo da Vinci, which a lot of people know him to be a great artist, but my goodness, he was so much more than that. Leonardo da Vinci was both an artist and a scientist. He was a philosopher. He wrote many theories. I mean, they have theories of his on paleontology and biology and anatomy. He was a brilliant man. And they say that he put everything he knew, all his sophistication, all of his hard work, his years of study and research, and he baked it all into the Mona Lisa. They say he exhausted himself in this work. It's amazing. And the question that everybody has when it comes to this painting is, who is Lisa? Like, who is this woman? She appears like just an ordinary woman. The greatest artist to arguably ever live painted a picture of this woman. Well, she has to be important. Who is she? And what you find is she's a pretty strange client. What you find in history is Leonardo da Vinci's father was an attorney. And one of his clients had a silk manufacturer. And he came to Leonardo's dad and he said, hey, what are the chances that your son would paint a portrait of my wife? To which Leonardo da Vinci, doing a favor for his father, agreed to it and basically did the artwork at cost. Right? This is a low commission. It's a strange client. It's a low commission. And in addition to that, there's all these details that throughout the years they have dug up about Lisa. Like, who was this woman? What's their background? And one of the documents they were able to find and preserve is her family will. You know, the thing you put in place where if something happens to you, this is what happens with my belongings. And when you go into her will, the one thing you see and the thing that they had, you know, the greatest treasure in was a pretty expansive jewelry collection. Lisa had a lot of jewelry, which is amazing because she shows up to be painted by the greatest artist ever, and she doesn't wear a single piece of jewelry. It's beautiful. It's as if she walked into the setting knowing, hey, I understand what makes me beautiful. And simultaneously, the great artist also understood, yeah, I too understand what makes you beautiful. I mean, think of the last time you got family photos. Like, I received many of your Christmas cards, and they're beautiful, and you all look happy and well put together. But I know seconds before that picture was taken, all hell was breaking loose, and the wheels were coming off the bus. Family photos are stressful. Hey, make eye contact, don't touch your hair, stand up straight, leave your brother alone, don't touch. I mean, we stress out over photos. We want to look our best. Senior photos, prom photos, wedding photos, engagement photos. Look your best. And the Mona Lisa flies in the face of that superficial sentiment. She recognized, hey, this is what makes me beautiful. And the great artist said, yeah, I agree. Another detail about the Mona Lisa is the veil. Do you see the veil at the top of her head? We can zoom in on that photo. You see it? Now, here's what artists have been amazed by with the veil. If you look at her skin outside of the veil, and then you look at her skin under the veil, they are identical. Meaning, the veil in no way obstructs your view of her complexion. So artists have said, well, that makes the veil invisible. Yeah. But you can see it. Yeah. So he was so masterful at his art, he made something invisible that you can see. Oh, that's beautiful. But probably the most comical details about the Mona Lisa is its size. Here's the actual size of the Mona Lisa. It is only 21 inches wide, which I think is great because I have 4 kids and 3 of them shown up on the scene 21 inches. I mean, this picture is the size of a baby, a newborn baby. And most would come to it and they would think, that small thing? But when you take a deeper look and you peer into the artistry and the mastery that is the Mona Lisa, you can't help but walk away being, now that's different. My favorite detail about the Mona Lisa is Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa for 13 years. Every single day, he meticulously would paint the Mona Lisa. And here's my favorite detail of it all. He painted the Mona Lisa up until his last dying day. In other words, his mentality was, I am going to fully exhaust myself in this work, and it'll be done when I'm done. He gave all of himself to this art. And I wish I could spell it out in more ways that would do it justice, but there is one video that you just have to see about the magnificence of the Mona Lisa. Check this out.
For Mona Lisa, Leonardo used a thin grain of poplar tree and applied an undercoat of lead white rather than just a mix of chalk and pigment. He wanted a reflective base. Leonardo painted with semi-transparent glazes that had a very small amount of pigment mixed with the oil. So how dark you wanted your glaze to be depends on how much pigment you use. He used more like a wash, which he applied thin, layer by layer. Here you can see 2 colors of contrast, light and dark. When you apply thin glaze over both of them, you can see it starts to unify the contrast, but also brings depth and luminosity. The lead white undercoat reflects the light back through the glazes, giving the picture more depth and, in essence, lighting Mona Lisa from within. As we move around the painting, that light shifts around. This microscopic cross-section is taken from another Leonardo painting. The first layer is the lead white ground. Layer 2 is known as imprimatura. This layer gives the painting a transparent toned ground, which will allow light falling onto the painting to reflect through the paint layers. The imprimatura became widely used during the Renaissance. Then we have a dark glaze, and that is followed by various layers of different colored glazes. Scientific analysis shows us that Leonardo used up to 30 different layers of painted glaze on the Mona Lisa, applied so thinly that it only totals 40 micrometers of paint. That's half the width of a human hair.
Church, can you welcome my family to the platform? This is my wife, Kristen, Presley, Miles, Riley, and Cannon. You guys can be seated. Miles fractured his foot 2 days ago. So I don't know what this Christmas season is like for you, but Team Johnson is literally out here breaking a leg. So we are having a blast. And a question that I've received in this season is, hey, how do you tell the Christmas story to your kids? How would you explain the Nativity to your children? And this would be an example. And I have talked to them about this detail that he says at the end of that video. And you have to hear it. You can almost miss it. He says, there is 30 layers of paint on the Mona Lisa. And it equates to half the thickness of a human hair. Think about that. 30 layers of paint, half the thickness of a human hair. It's essentially, Leonardo da Vinci going out there every single day and just a little more. A little more. I mean, meticulous. The time spent it's hard to get your mind around. It's quite the investment. And it makes me think of our family because I always tell our kids, God spent more time on mom. She comes with better features than dad. Anyone else have a bride who's overcompensating for you? Yeah, and I'm always trying to explain to them like the difference between Kristen and I, and sometimes I try to do it in ways that a child would understand. So I'd say, hey kids, if mom and dad were dogs, dad would be like a golden retriever. I just want to have fun and play fetch. Mom's like a German shepherd. Not just any German shepherd, like the one that works for the narcotics unit in the NYPD, like intense. Like these kids aren't gonna get away with anything. Mom has different features. God spent more time on her. In the same way, Leonardo spent more time on this. And it makes me think of a song growing up. There was this band that all of us scoffed at as if we didn't like them, but somehow we knew all their music, and they were called NSYNC. Come on, wave at me if you've ever heard the group NSYNC, led by Justin Timberlake. And he has this song, God Must Have Spent a Little More Time on You, and he makes this statement. He says, how can this be that right here with me is an angel? It's a miracle. Which, buckle up, folks, because we're going to go there. Your love is like a river, peaceful and deep. Your soul is like a secret that I never could keep. When I look into your eyes, I know that it's true. God must have spent a little more time on you. Oh, I told you, it's gonna be awkward for all of us. Here's the deal. I've already won her heart. Now I just get the job of embarrassing her as much as I can. You're gonna have to, your friends are gonna say, hey, what was Christmas like at Northview? And you'll be like, Prince, Snarky Puppy, Mona Lisa, NSYNC, he sang to us. You just have to go experience it yourself. It's weird. And I love all the details, and I bring this to your attention because I can't help but draw the parallels between the Mona Lisa and the Nativity. And when it comes to art exhibits, I love and I appreciate the individuals who do the presentation. The individuals who've done their homework, they know what they're talking about. The individuals who do things with excellence, who stand up there proud and with excellence and just etiquette. They are so good at what they do in presenting artwork. And I was thinking, what would it be like to present the Mona Lisa? Say that's your journey in life. You start out as a child, you love art, you start taking art classes, you end up becoming an art major in college, you volunteer at an art exhibit, eventually you get hired at the art exhibit, you work your way up in the organization, and then there comes a moment where the Mona Lisa comes to town and it's gonna be on display in your museum, and you get to present the Mona Lisa. Like, how would you do it? And there's a decorum to all of this, and certainly you would have to talk about, who Lisa was. You'd have to talk about Leonardo da Vinci. You would have to talk about the layers and the size and all these different things that make it a masterpiece. And then there would come this moment where you would stand in front of everybody and you would say, so ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all stages, ages, and places, to the residents of Indiana, to those visiting from out of town, as well as those watching online. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to present to you the Mona Lisa. It would be a big deal. Like, can you imagine being the presenter of the greatest artwork in history? And I was thinking about that because I was like, okay, if I'm in like the Louvre, down the hall from the Mona Lisa, and I get to present the Nativity, how would I do it? I mean, because you think the Mona Lisa has layers. Oh my goodness. You have no idea of the complexity, the beauty, the elegance, the brilliance of the Nativity. For starters, I would leave the Mona Lisa on the screen. So when people walk in, they would think, wait a second, I thought I was here to see the Nativity. Why am I looking at the Mona Lisa? Yeah, because that's gonna prime their thinking. They're not even gonna see it coming, but something about the Mona Lisa is gonna inform the way they think about the Nativity. In addition to that, I would certainly have some keys in the room. Because music, it makes things better, right? I would bring down the lights, I would make it more intimate, and then I would sell out. And I would get a paintbrush. Because if you're gonna paint a picture with your words, my goodness, you might as well just sell out to it. And I would go down the rabbit hole. I would go layer after layer in great detail. I would belabor the point. I would start in the book of Genesis. And I would talk about in the beginning, God created all things and his majesty just went to work and he spoke life and he hung the stars and the moon. It was brilliant. And then in the center of it all, he created humanity in his image. and his likeness. And God's desire was to have a loving relationship with humanity. But here's the problem. Love requires a choice to either choose to be in a relationship with God or to choose something else, and they chose differently. Sin and wickedness, it enters the world, and God then begins to unveil and weave into humanity his redemptive work. God is in love with humanity. And what you find all throughout history and what you find all throughout Scripture is the greatest love story to ever touch down on planet Earth. That God throughout the centuries, through prophets and foretellers and leaders and individuals who would rise up in faith, God would set the stage and prepare the way, and he would weave his masterpiece in and through it all. One of my favorite quotes about the Bible is the Father's portrait of the Son painted by the Spirit. Oh, that's a word. The Father's portrait of the Son painted by the Spirit. Because all throughout Scripture, all 66 books, every chapter, every paragraph, every sentence, it points to Jesus. It points to the masterpiece. It points to the Son that we celebrate on this day. I would go through Genesis. Hey, in Genesis, he's the breath of life. In Exodus, he's the Passover lamb. In Ezekiel, Leviticus, he is our high priest. And in Numbers, he is fire by night. In Deuteronomy, he is Moses' voice. And in Joshua, he is salvation's choice. In Judges, he is the lawgiver. And in Ruth, he is the kinsman redeemer. In Samuel, he is our trusted prophet. In Ezra, the true and faithful scribe. In Nehemiah, he is the rebuilder of broken walls and lives. It's beautiful. In Esther, he is Mordecai's courage, and in Job, the timeless redeemer. In Psalms, he is our morning song, and in Proverbs, he is our wisdom's cry. The details, the attention, the meticulous effort, God weaving through the tapestry of humanity, this artwork that would come into play. Ecclesiastes, he's the time and seasons, and in Song of Solomon, he is the lover's dream. In Isaiah, he's the Prince of Peace, and in Jeremiah, the weeping prophet. In Lamentations, he is the cry for Israel, and in Ezekiel, he's the call from sin. You go on to find him in Daniel as the stranger in the fire, and Hosea, he is forever faithful. You have to understand the dimensions. You have to understand the brilliance. You have to understand all that was contained in the Nativity. In the book of Joel, he's the Spirit's power. And in Amos, he's the arms that carry us. In Obadiah, he is Lord our Savior. And in Jonah, he is the great missionary. In Micah, he's the promise of peace. In Nahum, he is our strength and our shield. In Habakkuk and Zephaniah, he is pleading for revival. And in Haggai, he restores our lost heritage. In Zechariah, he is our fountain. And in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, he is God, man, Messiah. He is a big deal, and he arrives on the scene. And in the book of Acts, he is fire from heaven. And in Romans, he's the grace of God. And in Corinthians, he's the power of love. And in Galatians, he is freedom from the curse of sin. In Ephesians, he is our glorious treasure. And in Philippians, he is the servant's heart. Every layer meticulously baked into this Christ of ours, this masterpiece that we celebrate. In Colossians, he is the Godhead Trinity. In Thessalonians, he's our coming King. He goes on in Titus and Timothy and Philemon to be our faithful pastor and our mediator. And in Hebrews, he's our everlasting covenant because our God never lies. In James, he heals the sick. It's amazing. In John and Jude, he's the lover coming for his bride. And in Revelations, he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the Alpha and the Omega. Oh, you gotta understand it. He's the morning star. He's the lily of the valley. He's the King of righteousness and the King of glory. He's the way, the truth, and the life, the true vine and the living water. This Jesus is King. This Jesus is supreme. He's the light of the world. So if I was presenting it, I'd have to say something like that. And then I would have to do the decorum thing. And I'd have to stand publicly And I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people from all stages, ages, and places, to the wonderful people of Indiana, to those visiting from out of town, as well as people watching online. On behalf of Northview Church, it is my distinct honor and privilege to present to you heaven's Mona Lisa. That's how I would do it. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Here's what you have to understand. The Nativity is heaven's Mona Lisa. It's beautiful. It's mesmerizing. It's breathtaking. And what I love is that detail where she shows up without jewelry. She just comes as she is. It's a beautiful detail. Because when you look at this, when you show up in an art exhibit, you see a lot of this stuff. But the wonderful thing about our masterpiece is, yes, you can come as you are, but there's no barrier standing between you and this masterpiece. Nothing separates you from this Jesus. You can come as you are, accepted by the greatest artist ever, because he sees the true beauty that is in you. He sees his thumbprint that is upon you. I think that's beautiful. Now, when we look at this, we get nervous. We actually appreciate this kind of stuff. We have a hard time trusting that people will be decent. So imagine you go to the Louvre and you're there to witness the Mona Lisa. And someone forgets to put up the rope. And someone walks into the Mona Lisa and they grab the picture off the wall and they walk out into the streets and they throw it in the mud. What would you do? You would gasp. It would take your breath away. You would think to yourself, what did you just do? You just threw the Mona Lisa in the mud. And folks, when you look at the Nativity and you see the Son of God lying in a feeding trough for cattle, and you see him lying in a stable among animals, what you need to see is the creator of the heavens and the earth threw heaven's Mona Lisa in the mud. I mean, it jars you, doesn't it? You think to yourself, why would he do that? Why would he throw his masterpiece in the mud? And the short answer is because he did it in exchange for you and for me. And again, like Mona Lisa, I feel like I'm a strange client and he got a bad commission. It's hard to get my mind around. And here's the thing. He not only threw heaven's Mona Lisa in the mud, heaven's Mona Lisa also laid in blood.